Hey guys, what's up? It's Mr. Graves. I'm going to go ahead and get started on this so that we can get through as many of these questions as we can. I'm going to go rapid fire, so feel free to pause, rewind, whatever you got to do to get the answers. So just kind of stick with me as I'm running through these. So we're going to start with the judicial branch, what we've been talking about most recently since it's fresh in our minds. Number one, the purpose of the judicial branch is to interpret the laws. Interpret meaning kind of to look at the laws and look at the Constitution and determine, do those laws violate the Constitution or do they align with the Constitution? That's their interpretation. Number two, the authority to hear a case is called jurisdiction. Okay, we have state courts, we have federal courts, and they each have jurisdiction, authority to hear a certain case in particular situations. Number three, if a trial court has the authority to hear a case first, it has what we call original jurisdiction. So think about it. They hear the case first, so they hear it originally. It's original jurisdiction. Now, on the other hand, a court that hears a case that has been appealed has what we call appellate jurisdiction. Okay, appellate being related to the word appeal, right? So if you have your original case, your original jurisdiction is at the trial court level, the district court level, the bottom level. If you don't agree with that decision, you have the opportunity to appeal to a higher court. And that higher court, the next higher court would be the Court of Appeals. And they don't have to grant you a new trial and listen to your appeal, but if they do, they have what we call appellate jurisdiction. They hear cases that have been appealed from a lower court. Number five, the highest court in the land is the Supreme Court. Make sure you put a star by that one. I know for a fact that's going to be on the final exam. Number six, we talked about this on Tuesday in class. Civil law cases involve disputes between two or more people. Okay, one big thing to remember about a civil law case, civil meaning people, it's a disagreement between two or more people, or it could be two or more groups of people. But no crime has been committed in a civil law case. That's not what it's issue. It's a disagreement. It could be like a divorce case. What I talked about in class is if my neighbor's tree falls on my car during a storm, I think they need to pay for it. They don't think they should have to pay for it because it's my car. We have a disagreement, right? So that's a civil case. No crime was committed, but we have a disagreement. Now, on the other hand, number seven, in a criminal law case, look at the root here. Look at the word criminal. The root of criminal is crime. So it's a criminal law case if a crime has been committed, no matter if it's a felony like murder, a really bad crime, or if it's something small like a misdemeanor like jaywalking or running a red light. It's still a crime. In a criminal law case, the prosecutor is the government. Okay, the government is the one trying to prove that the defendant, the person who's been accused of the crime, actually committed that crime. They're trying to prove that you're guilty. Put a star by that. That's definitely on the final exam as well. Number eight, cases can be appealed if, there's a couple reasons it could be appealed. It could be appealed if there was a mistake made by the judge or a lawyer in the first case, or if there is new evidence that has come to light after your original trial. Those are two of the big reasons why you would have an appeal. You could also have an appeal if the question is a constitutional question based on like the Bill of Rights and the amendments. Number nine, if a lawsuit is filed, the case will be, going back to number six here, a civil law case. Okay, it's a civil case. Lawsuits, no crime really has been committed. It's just somebody disagrees with somebody else. And that is a civil law case. All right, now let's go back to the beginning of the semester, to our lessons on citizenship, that unit. So number 10 here, what does naturalization mean? That means you're a person born in a foreign country and you go through the process to become a U.S. citizen. You're not born in the United States, but you become a U.S. citizen. This should say, let me go ahead and fix this. This should say naturalization, not neutralization, naturalization. All right, I think we fixed it there. I totally did not fix it. Now it's fixed. Naturalization means you're a person born in a foreign country and you become a U.S. citizen. So there's really only two ways to become a U.S. citizen. You're either born in the country, when you're automatically a citizen, or you're naturalized. You're born in a foreign country and you become a U.S. citizen through the naturalization process. Civic duties, we all know that we have a lot of rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, rights to protect us against unwarranted searches and seizures, the right to bear arms. We have all these rights. But in order for us to actually have those rights, protect them, we have certain duties that we need to also carry out as well. We also call these responsibilities. So some examples could be paying taxes, obeying laws, voting, which could be a right and a responsibility, serving on a jury. All of those are civic duties or responsibilities. Number 12, what is civic participation? This simply means that you are engaging in your community. It could be community service, like donating to the and donating and helping out with the Secret Santa project at the school, cleaning up the roads, all kind of things like that. Could be starting a petition, calling your congressman when you're upset about an issue. Those are all examples of civic participation where you're engaging in your community. Another example of civic participation would be to start a petition or to sign a petition. But if you're the one that's starting the petition, before you present it to the people that are in charge, so like if you want to start a petition about the dress code at North Dakota High School, before you present it to Dr. Brown, you actually want to make sure you go around and get signatures first, right? A sheet of paper saying, hey, we demand that you become more lenient with the dress code. That's not going to mean anything unless you have a lot of people signing it saying they support that position. The next unit here was the foundations of government. Number 14, why did the British impose the Stamp Act on American colonists? They did so to pay off the debt that they had built up from the French and Indian War. The British said that the American colonists owed them since the French and Indian War was fought mainly in the colonies, and the British said to protect the colonists. The colonists disagreed. They said the British fought that war to protect their own interest. But the bottom line is the British went into heavy debt after fighting a 7-year war, the French and Indian War. They had to raise money somehow to pay off that debt, and they thought taxing the American colonists would be the way to do that. Number 15, what is a social contract? It is an agreement between the people and the government, okay? The people agree to give up some of their rights in return for the protection by the government. That's the social contract. Contract meaning agreement, social meaning society. It's that contract, that agreement there between two parts of society, the people and the leaders. Number 16, one of the early philosophers, John Locke from England, he believed the government should protect the natural rights of the governed, the people, basically. And what did he mean when he referred to natural rights? He meant that people have the right to life, liberty, and property. Life, liberty, and property. Now, in the United States, with the Declaration of Independence, we kind of changed that a little bit. Thomas Jefferson put his own twist on it and said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it all comes from John Locke. Number 17, one of the principles stated in the Declaration of Independence is the government should be based upon the consent of the governed. And this is the concept of popular sovereignty, right? The consent meaning permission of the governed, of the people. So basically it says that the government has no authority unless the people give the government permission to have authority over them. And that's one of the basic principles that the United States was established on. Number 18, embedded in the Declaration of Independence. Let me delete that typo. I find all sorts of typos here. Embedded in the Declaration of Independence is the basic political idea that if the government denies its people certain basic rights, the people have the authority to overthrow the government. Okay, that was kind of the way to justify what they were doing to the British. Because remember, the colonists were British. They were under the control of the British, but they felt that the British government was denying them certain basic rights. Okay, like the right to have a representative in Parliament. So they said, in that case, we have the right to rise up and rebel and overthrow that government and establish a new government that will protect our rights. And that's exactly what happened in the American Revolution. Number 19, how is government authority divided in a federal system of government? It's simply divided between the state and federal government. It's the idea of federalism. You share power between the different levels of government. Sharing power between the state and federal levels. Number 20, what are 3 weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation? The Articles of Confederation was the first plan of the government of the United States before the U.S. Constitution, but it was a bad plan. That's why we had to scrap the Articles of Confederation, get rid of them, and start all over with a second plan that we call the U.S. Constitution. But a couple of weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, reasons why we had to get rid of them. Number 1, there was no chief executive. In fact, there was no executive branch or judicial branch, so no president, no national court system. There was no uniform currency. Every state had their own type of money. There was no ability for the legislative branch, which was the only branch that we have. There was no ability for them to force states to pay taxes. So obviously it's a very weak government, and it wasn't going to work out very long. Fortunately, we had some founding fathers who recognized that and decided to make a change. Number 21, how did the Great Compromise influence the legislature? What did it do? So when we're creating the U.S. Constitution, one of the big issues we had to decide is, okay, how are we going to determine how many representatives each state gets? Of course, the small states are going to say it should be equal for every state because they're small. But the big states said, no, that's not fair. You only have like 5,000 people. We have 25,000 people. So there's more people than that, but just for example. So if we have more people, we should have more representatives and more votes in Congress. So neither side could really agree on it. The big state said it should be by population. The small state said it should be equal and fair for everybody. So the Great Compromise was like, hey, why don't we create a bicameral 2-house legislature with a House of Representatives that makes the big states happy because the more people you have, the more representatives you get. It's based on population. And then we'll have a Senate where it's equal for every state. Every state only gets 2 senators, no matter how big or small or how many people live in your state. So that's what the Great Compromise did. Create a bicameral legislature with a House of Representatives and a Senate. Number 22, why did the Anti-Federalists push for the addition of a Bill of Rights to the United States Constitution? The Anti-Federalists were very, very scared that when we went to the U.S. Constitution that we were giving too much power to the president and the executive branch. And the government, the central government was getting too much power, and they would use that power to violate the rights of the American citizens, just like the British did when the Americans were living under British rule. So they pushed for the addition of the Bill of Rights to protect specific rights that all Americans should have and that the government could never violate. Number 23, what were the 85 essays written to defend the Constitution? Once they wrote the Constitution, guys, it was not a shoo-in that they were going to approve it. Every state had to look at it, have a ratifying convention, and had to have 9 of the 13 states approve the Constitution. New York was a very big and populous state, I should say. And so Alexander Hamilton decided to write a series of essays. We didn't mean it to be 85, it meant to be like 25 originally, but he wanted to write a series of essays called the Federalist Papers. That's the answer, number 23, that would argue in favor of the Constitution in New York. But it ended up being very influential throughout the colonies, especially the colonies in the Northeast. Number 24, what is the idea that no citizen should be above the specific rules set forth in a country called? It's called rule of law. We are under the rule of law in the United States, which means no citizen, no matter how rich or powerful you are, is above the law. All the laws should equally apply to everyone. Number 15, what does popular sovereignty mean? We kind of already talked about that. It means that it goes back to the consent of the governed. The power and authority of the government comes from the people. That's what popular sovereignty means. Number 26, what is the definition of democracy? Simply rule by the people. All right, number 27, U.S. Constitution. What is the name of the plan that created the second government of the United States? We already mentioned that. It's the U.S. Constitution. Number 28, we have different kind of powers. I mean, we have a federal system of government. We share power between the federal government and the state governments. So the states have their own kind of powers, and the federal government has their own kind of powers. So powers that belong only to the states are known as reserved powers. They are reserved for the states. Number 29, what type of federal power is not actually stated in the Constitution, but is understood the federal government has them because they're related to other powers? Those are implied powers. They're not directly written in the Constitution, but in order to carry out the express powers that are written in the Constitution, it's kind of assumed or implied the federal government has those powers. Like a military charge. It doesn't mention that specifically in the Constitution, but it says that Congress and the president have the power to create a military and maintain a navy. In order to do that, you need soldiers, so it's implied that they have the authority to draft people into the military. Number 30, which clause states the federal laws are superior to state laws? That would be the supremacy clause. When state laws and federal laws contradict, the federal laws will always win out because they are the supreme law of the land, so the supremacy clause. Number 31, the Magna Carta, Petition of Rights, and English Bill of Rights, what they have in common is they're all 3 English political documents that limited the power of the English monarch. Started this process of taking power away from the King and Queen of England, which leads to what we have now in the United States with our president. Number 32, what is the overall purpose of the Bill of Rights? It was to protect the natural rights of American citizens. Number 33, the hatred for the Quartering Act. That is embodied in the Third Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which outlaws the quartering of soldiers during peacetime. Number 34 is an example here. Judge Brown places Joe Smith's bail for cheating on a high school exam, which sucks, but it's not that big of a deal, at $500,000. That is a violation of the Eighth Amendment that protects you against excessive bail, because $500,000 for cheating, that is excessive. Number 35, this is also kind of a typo, but the suffrage amendments, let me give you a couple examples. Remember, suffrage means the right to vote. So the 15th Amendment gave African Americans the right to vote. That's a suffrage amendment. The 9th Amendment gave women the right to vote. That's a suffrage amendment. Those are the 2 big ones that you need to make sure that you know, 15th and 19th. I guess also the 22nd Amendment, which allowed for the direct election of U.S. senators. Number 36, the 5th and 14th Amendment, they both deal with what we call due process of law. So the answer for 36 is due process of law. Number 37, why would a person like to be arrested for shouting fire in a crowded movie theater when there's no fire? Because you have to balance your freedom of speech, because somebody might say, hey, it's my freedom of speech, I can shout fire, but you have to balance freedom of speech with concern for the rights and protections of other people as well. If you shout fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire, it's going to lead to probably a stampede, people are going to get hurt and potentially die. Number 38, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 sought to end discriminatory laws in the South known as Jim Crow laws. And then number 39, we will get to in the next video.